Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and I hope everyone had a good Memorial Day. I spent mine building a fortress, not for the 40K, but for my children. We bought the kids a big play yard thing. Got it from Costco for like 600 bucks, which means all assembly required. So that was a lot of my day. Finished it and got to sit down and look at the leaks for the core rulebook. So now we have basically everything, a comprehensive rulebook. Are the missions going to be separate? Is there a separate book? Are we looking at separate mission book, or is that just omitted at this time? Don't know the answer to that one, but I got a lot of other answers. So I got some time to read through this, and man, some of the stuff that I caught and picked up, I just want to throw out here, start the conversation, and see what did I find, what is accurate, and if I miss something, where is it? Where is this rule hiding? What page? Where does it pop up? Because now we have a chance to start building up on how we play this game and how we're going to play 40K in 10th edition. So I'm real excited. Guys, subscribe to the channel, please. It really helps me out. And let's jump in. So, first and foremost, spoiler alert, confirmed in the artwork. The Emperor is still attached to the Golden Throne at this time. Big, beautiful black and white picture, the same old one we see for a time. We start off with the usual introduction of this is 40K, this is what we'll do, here's the game, core concept, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And get into some of the basics of we're going to use these keywords. These are things that we've heard all the times in the past. So, the usual legal jargon for newer players. What some of the terminology is that you hear us say and what these things mean. Then we jump into unit coherency, which is basically exactly the same, except for one thing, which I'm excited for as a Necron player. Now you only need to be within 2 inches of a single model in a squad size of 2 to 6 models, and Scorpex destroyers, regular destroyers, Scorpex, Ophidians, all of those units that sometimes when I would run them, I would take them as 5-mans, just to, at the early parts of the edition, ignore Plasma Interceptor, Flying Plasma Blast Death. So now 6 is the cutoff point. Cool. I'm happy with that, especially for Necrons. I'm sure some other armies and there's other units that are going to be pretty happy to see that too. Moving on, then we go into engagement range. So we've seen in the first leaks that a lot is being forced to be in engagement range. When you charge, you're trying to get into base contact, and they're really pushing to make sure that we are in base-to-base contact in a lot of ways. However, they still have stated that engagement range is within 1 inch horizontally. So I'm gonna have to take some time later on and look back over the combat section, and see what can we do. What are some of the tricks that we had in 9th edition that still are going to play over, and how will this all work? I think that we're going to see a reduction of some of the combat tricks, but there might be some that can still kind of sneak in their own way. It talks about battlefield, talks about terrain, gives a very generic backstory on it, and says cite these pages for the rules later. And then talks about visibility. Visibility is unchanged from 9th edition, still model to model basis, and just kind of gives more of a clear-cut little thing of like what defines a model visible, unit visible, model fully visible, or unit fully visible. And it really gives that laid out definition, so at least when talking about the rule, you know what they're referring to as wholly visible, partially, etc., etc. Then we get down into, again, more clarifications, what we're talking about, like what a D3 is, sequencing, little things like that. And then the phase order of the game. We've seen this a couple times: command phase, movement phase, shooting phase, charge phase, fight phase. So all of those that's psychic phase is gone. Everything else pretty much the same. No more L step at the end. Now that's in your command phase. It goes into command phase. Talks about the fact that you gain a command point. Both players gain a command point at the beginning of the battle, at the beginning of each turn. So same as what we've been doing now. no crazy mission extras for it. You just gain a command point. Um, it talks about battle shock. It talks about the fact of if you fall back, how you have to make a desperate escape test for every model in that unit. Um, you can't be affected by stratagems, and your objective control value is 0, which now confirmed in here. One thing I was wondering for a while is, can you still hold an objective with an objective controlled value 0 unit? So my thought is, okay, well, we're checking to see if I have a unit on that objective. So yes, I do have a unit on the objective. They just battle shock with an objective control value 0. So can it still hold it? I will say, looking through everything on here, and I'll cite it when I get down to it, the answer is no. It is stated exactly in here that the first thing you check is the value. If the value is tied, then it is considered contested. So if your value is 0, your opponent's value is 0, you tie with 0, and therefore you don't control the objective. So battle shock is going to be huge, as many people have said. I can see it more and more now as we go through it. Explains what starting strength is, destroyed, just terminology again, and then attached units. Explains that the when you attach the unit, we see starting strength of an attached unit is equal to the combined starting strength of all units and number of models in the leader unit added to. So if you add a leader unit that has potentially other bodyguard, it looks like that increases the starting strength. So you'll have to start testing battle shock at a different value because of what you're starting. So if you have a 10-man squad and you put a character in, at 2 characters, like a character and a support character, you go up to 12. Now you're testing battle shock at a 5 when the 10-man originally would have tested at 4. So just clarifying what with that stuff and what the starting strength is. And yeah, I don't see in here if it says that you test the leader or the bodyguard. You test off their leadership. Hopefully you do. Hopefully that's a big part of it, is that I think you use the highest leadership value. That would make the most sense. I couldn't see why you wouldn't use the highest leadership value in there, especially with some of the characters. Okay, moving units. So a lot of this is exactly the same as what we are currently doing. And with that, I mean is when you move a unit, you declare if it's going to make an advanced move or regular move. Now, prior editions, you'd move, and you could opt to do an advanced move to add D6 to it. So you would move and advance. This, you move or advance, which I like that. I think that's the cleaner way of doing this, of having that whole interaction, is you pick, are you going to make an advanced move or a regular move? These are the pros and cons, and these are how they work. Remaining stationary is the same. I think it was 8th edition was the last time we've seen this, where it was model to model basis. This is unit basis. One model moves, the whole unit moves. I'm fine with that. I think that's the best way to do that as well too. It's too tough sometimes where you don't intend to move a model, or a model got moved, and it starts all the question of like, well, wait, did that model move? Did it not move? Should it have? It's just easier. The whole unit, none at all. Advanced move, roll the dice. Can't shoot, can't charge afterwards. Obviously, some weapons, like assault weapons, that are an exception to this, but advanced move, exact same thing. Fallbacks. So I looked over fallback, and I was getting ready to say, okay, it's the same as it was before, except I read back through it a second time, and here's what I'm understanding is that the desperate escape tests, you do more than one of these. So let's look at that. Let's look at this real quick. So when you fall back, you still make a normal move. Equal to the move characteristic, and you have to end your move so that you are, out of engagement range. You can't shoot or charge afterwards. Okay, so those are the same. Desperate escape test. Unlike when making other types of moves, models can move over enemy models when making a fallback move, as if those models were not there. But you must take a desperate escape test for each model that will do so, excluding Titanic or models that can fly. So models with fly can go over enemy models when they fall back. But here's a kicker. Before any models in that unit, or it says, if the unit is battle shocked, then in addition, before any of those models are removed, you must make a desperate escape test, and then you can fall back. So if you're battle shocked and you go to fall back, you're going to make a desperate escape test, and then once you move over the units, you're going to make another desperate escape test. Now, one thing that I don't know if I said this properly, and that point is, when you move over a enemy unit and have to take the desperate escape test, it's model to model basis. So if you move one model over, you make one desperate escape test. So it's not penalizing you for having to edge one guy over. But if you're falling back because of, and you're battle shocked, then every single model must do this. So what a desperate escape test is. Each time you take a desperate escape test for a model, roll 1d6. For each 1 or 2, one model from the unit falling back is destroyed, selected by the controlling player. So in the example they give down here is they show 5 Marines falling back over a squad of Termagants that are clearly not in combat, but they're still able to cross over them. They make the desperate escape test. It shows they roll 1-1 and 1-2. 2 models get removed. So it's really going to be hard to lock a unit in combat, but punishing. And if a unit is battle shocked, it can be really, really punishing for them to try and get out of combat. In some of those scenarios, it might be better off just to stay and try and throw some cheap shots in there before you get taken down, because that's a heavy, heavy blow to try and fall back, especially if you're battle shocked. One thing that also gets talked about in here when you're, I think this might be the next section. Oh, it's the next section. Okay, cool. So it talks about moving over terrain and basically says any terrain feature that is 2 inches tall or less, you just move over it as if it's not there. So pipelines and stuff like that. And anything other than that, then you have to measure and move up normal move characteristics. So 3 inches and higher, you'd have to move 3. If you move 6 inches and it's a 3-inch height, you could then move 3 inches up and then 3 inches forward. Sorry, kind of chop that one apart there. But then it goes on to fly. So fly shows the image they show where it says you measure flying, you measure the air distance, the air length. And then the image they show is a triangle. So the Games Workshop definition based on this by measuring through the air is your measure from, okay, my model is here and I want my model to end up here. So from this ground point to the point of this building where I'm landing and probably a little further, that's the angle you're measuring. So you're measuring up to the building, not I'm up here, so I'm just going to measure straight across. And okay, now I'm 12 inches, I land on there. This is my 12-inch fly range that puts me from ground level, but through the air. Through the air is the triangle, is an angle. And when you guys see it in the rule book, you'll see what I'm talking about. It shows a Tyranid Prime moving on top of a building like that. So now, going back, I kind of jumped away from real quick with the moving up buildings and stuff like that. It doesn't really say in here like a maximum. It just says models can move freely up. Models cannot move through terrain 2 inches, but can climb up and down them. So I guess the only restriction is, do you have enough move to physically make it up the piece of terrain? Because a 5-inch tall wall, if a Marine can move 6 inches, you can go 5 inches up and 1 forward. So I guess they can make it up those. So I think that's kind of the only restriction is, do you have enough move to go up and go onto it? Because like if you're going 6 inches up, okay, and you have a 6-inch move, okay, well, cool. You just went 6 inches here and then you're falling back down to your butt. Moving on to reinforcements. Talks about what they are. It says in here how a unit starts the battlefield in a location other than the battlefield. So just giving kind of a little bit of a clarification on where reserves, where they go. Always count as having made a normal move when they arrive. Any reserve units up on the battlefield by the end of the battle is destroyed. So all the same stuff. But again, you got to include it. This is the breaking point of the middle of the rule book, so got to have all that stuff in there, even though it's the same stuff. Honestly, I like seeing that there's a lot of stuff that we can roll through and go, okay, this is the same, this is the same, this is the same. Don't change too much about the game, just because we don't want to learn a whole brand new game. Oh man, I'm too old for that. All right, transports. So we've seen a lot with these guys. We've seen a lot with transports on disembarking, embarking. You disembark and embark. It's 3 inches, wholly within 3 inches. So definitely it is wholly. The firing deck rule, embarking and what it means to be embarked on a transport. Yeah, just in case if you haven't heard, firing deck rule basically means that a unit vehicle has firing deck of X, X being 1, 3, 4, whatever it may be. And that's how many models inside that are in the transport can shoot with the transport. So what actually happens is if you have firing deck 2, you select 2 of the models that are inside, and their guns actually are added to the profile of the transport. So any buffs or perks or abilities that the transport may have, it can now fire those guns as if it was part of it and has those benefits as well too. So firing deck's cool. I liked it. I loved it way back in the day. Kind of got beat up a lot when it was Purifier Spam Leaf Blower list with Psy Rifleman. And anyone who played Grey Knights back in the day knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's nodding their head and going, yep, I missed my Psy Rifleman. I got auto cannons on the shelf. Psy Riflemen were really, really cool. All right, 10th. That's what we're here for. Now, destroyed transports. This is interesting. Okay, so when a transport is destroyed, all the models have to get out within wholly within 3 inches of it. And then until the start of the controller's next command phase, the unit's battle shocked. Okay, so if you destroy a transport, and this is really cool. It's another layer, and I like this. So if you shoot at and destroy a transport on an objective marker, or if you charge and destroy a transport on an objective marker, and you have a secondary that says do something that involves you controlling that objective marker, the unit that got out is now immediately battle shocked until their next command phase. So at least until the end of the turn, their objective control value when they get out of the vehicle is 0. So that is cool. It's going to make it helps bring transports back in level, especially with how much now they've gotten with firing decks and the increase in toughness. That's something that brings them back down. It's like, okay, cool. You want to take out the vehicle because that means that the guys don't take the objective, and I like that. I like that a lot. I like how that's going to play. Until the end of the turn, the unit counts as having made a normal move and cannot declare a charge this turn. So cannot declare a charge this turn. Okay, so most situations, obviously, the vehicle is going to die in your opponent's turn. But with the added addendum of the unit cannot declare a charge this turn, there are a couple of things that and I can see armies that say after your opponent charges, you can then charge a unit. Well, here's a situation where you cannot. And I mean, again, there's ways that your vehicle might blow up during your turn. And so I think where this rule comes from is the Space Wolves had a little trick back in the day where they would basically take a Razorback. I believe it was a Razorback, but it might have been a Rhino with a Combi Plasma. And you'd run the thing up the field. And it could only snap fire, so it was only hitting on 6 or something like that. Or it was -1 to hit or something. So there was a way that you were making it easier to fail with the plasma. And so what would happen is you would move the Rhino up the field, you'd shoot you'd flat out advance that thing, get right up in their face, you'd shoot the plasma gun, you would get a 1, which with plasma weapons would say a model in the unit is destroyed. Well, that model is a 1 model unit, a Rhino or a Razorback. So when you fail, the Rhino or Razorback is destroyed, which means that the guys inside have to disembark. Now, when they disembark, there was no penalty to them. So you could then immediately charge with said squads. So I feel like this is probably a reason why that's in there, as well as some stratagems and other things. Just you can't rush your vehicle, blow it up, and then be able to charge with the guys coming out. Right above it, it does talk about the fact of deadly demise. Units that are disembarked from a destroyed transport model are not affected by the model's deadly demise ability. Instead, you must roll 1d6 for each disembarking model. For each roll of 1, that disembarking model's unit suffers a mortal wound. So there's a reason I waited to talk about that. Right now, at this current time, if you put a single character in a transport and it blows up and you roll 1, you lost that character. You have 10 Marines in there, you roll 10 dice. If you roll 4 ones, you lose 4 Marines. As we heard before with the Desperate Breakout, if you roll 1, you lose a whole model. When a transport's destroyed, you roll a 1, only a 1, not a 1 or 2, just a 1. You take a single mortal wound. Now, it means nothing for single wound models, but now Space Marines, multi-wound models, and reasons that you may not have wanted to take a transport because of the investment and the things you might lose, it really doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt. That's not that bad. So now there is the emergency disembarkation. If a transport model is destroyed and it's not possible to set up a disembarking unit wholly within 3 inches of the transport wholly within the transport model and not within engagement range of an enemy model, that unit must instead perform an emergency disembark. This is performed as described for disembarking, except the destroyed This is done the same as disembarking from a destroyed transport model, except that a unit must be set up wholly within 6 inches of the dedicated transport. You roll a dice. On a 1 through 3, you take a single mortal wound instead of just a 1. Okay, so 1 through 3, you're taking a single mortal wound. And here's the other kicker. You roll 1 dice for each model, not 1 dice for each wound. So 5 Terminators, the example I show here, 5 Terminators get out of a Land Raider, you roll 5 dice. So even if all 5 of those dice were a 3 or less, you lose 1 and almost 2 guys. From a desperate breakout, from the worst case scenario, you still don't even lose 50% of your squad. So yeah, transports are definitely going to be at least playable, not completely cripple your army. Where before it's like, like I said, your transport gets blown up, the guys just get out on the place, and it kind of leads to feels bad. It doesn't really feel like you're not pushing forward. It's like, okay, first I got to take out the transport, then I got to take out the guys. So I blew up your transport, and that affects you in no way because you still got the guys on the objective. Okay, that kind of sucks. And now taking a Land Raider and putting Terminators in it to drive around with, now you actually can do that and not worry, oh, it got blown up. There goes 4 of my 5 guys because I rolled bad. You can roll really bad and still not lose half of your squad. All right, so going into the shooting phase. So now this is where we're getting into the leaks that we've already seen. Lone operative, unless part of an attached unit. This unit can only be selected as target of a ranged attack if it is within 12. So we knew that. We've seen that before. Big guns never tire, how they work with monsters and vehicles in combat. You subtract 1 when just shooting, and you can shoot at stuff in combat that you're in combat with if you're a monster or a vehicle. You can select an enemy vehicle monster with engagement range each time a model makes attack, unless it's a pistol weapon. Pistols do not get the modifier. Locked in combat, while an enemy engagement range model, you can select enemy units to target. Okay, just talk about target range weapons, and then we get into the special ability of stealth. That if every unit, you subtract 1 from the hit roll against stealth units. Then we get over to our hits. Rolling to wound, all the same. Unless you're double. If you're double, then it's 2s or 6s, depending on if you're on the plus or minus on that side. Otherwise, unless you are equal, you're 4 up, you're equal. Otherwise, if you have the higher strength, you're +1. You'll get 3s to hit wound. And if you are down and have a lower strength, then you need 5s to wound. Saving throws, invulnerable saves. Invulnerable saves can never be modified. I'm just throwing some little stuff out there that, we've seen all this stuff before. I just want to throw it out there. Feel no pain. We've seen feel no pain is now X. So different units will have different values depending on how much pain they don't want to feel. Deadly demise. So now it's real easy. If your vehicle explodes, then you roll a d6. It's deadly demise X. So then if it explodes, everyone within 6 inches suffers X mortal wounds. So it's just what's your demise value. Much easier than how a lot of the vehicles were exploding now. Like you had to check and see, okay, how was this one? Was it D6 range? Was it 1? Is it D3? It's just so all over the place on just the values. Much easier. Much easier. Weapon abilities. Torrent. Torrent is auto hit now. That's an old one that comes back. Twin Linked is now re-rolling failed wounds. Bounced around a lot. It's been re-roll hits. It was an extra shot. Now it's re-rolling failed wounds. Next thing you know, it's going to give you a boost to your psychic powers. Oh, let's see. Heavy. Heavy is awesome. I love heavy. Now, heavy is not a negative. It's positive. Heavy weapons, if you stand still, you get +1 to hit. So a lot of the heavy weapons that we're seeing on units are coming in at a 4. Like 4 up to shoot this weapon. If you stand still, you got the 3. With tanks, that's going to be really cool too. Something that I didn't make note of when I did my video with the Doomstalker and the Annihilation Barge and the cannon was that's also a heavy weapon. So if you do sit still, the Annihilation Barge could hit on 2s, with Doomstalkers hitting on 3s. Again, that's kind of one of the things that I want to see get away from with those 2 units, because you have a floating hover tank and a walker that has 4 long legs, and you're telling me just don't move it. Don't move it at all. I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I'll take a perk like that, a +1 to hit if I don't move, but don't make the weapon so weak because of it. At least that's just my hopes, my feelings. Precision. When targeting an attached unit, the attacking model can have the attacks allocated to the character model in that unit, in that visible unit. So each time attacking me with a weapon successfully wounds an attached unit. So this is just whenever it wounds. So this isn't anything with critical hits or anything like that. So we might see some sniper rifles where you are able to put damage onto that character that's in the squad. It's the only real way to do damage to the character. Is now wound allocations. You don't take it to the actual. You can never take it to the character. So there's not going to be any super tanks or anything like that. You can make them tough, but the unit's going to still go first. Characters are not allowed to take damage unless they're the last model alive. Pretty picture of some weapons. Hazardous. The damage that it's going to do to yourself. A lot of the devastating wounds turns the damage that you would do in immortal wounds. That's one I'm waiting to see. I want to see what gun, what's going to be the gun, what army is going to have that gun that's going to do so many mortal wounds it's going to be broken. Who's it going to be? Right, let's see. If I had to place a just random bet with no information on anything at all, I'll say, I want to say Tyranids, but I'm gonna go with Eldar. Eldar Grey Knights. No, Eldar. I'm gonna go with Eldar. Eldar are gonna get a random weapon that is going to just do so much in devastating wounds. It's just going to be insane amount of damage, especially with Fate dice. That's my guess, and it's a guess. I really could. I mean, I want to say Necrons, but I feel like that's the easy and obvious ones. I'm just going to say Necrons. Give Necrons everything. Get a free first place Grand Tournament trophy just because you entered with Necrons. That's how it should be. Necrons. All right. Anti, you always score a critical hit. Okay, so you always get a critical hit if X scores a critical hit or a critical wound. I'm sorry. So this is going to be really cool because a lot of the things like devastating wound is a critical hit. So if you have a anti-tank gun that's anti-tank 2 up, and it means all of your 2s or better are going to count as critical hits. So every 2 is going to do devastating wounds. Whew, that's going to be vicious. It's going to be vicious to see anti-tank weapon, anti-something with the devastating wounds keyword. Those are going to be vicious, vicious, vicious guns. Charge phase. Same, like I said, I want to take some time and really go through and evaluate this some more. Charge phase has always been a complicated phase, and a complex phase, I should say. There's a lot of very, very intricate details to it that have always been that there's a lot of good tech. There's a lot of good tech to charging and combat in 40K. So I want to take a little more time and go over it, especially with seeing now that engagement range. I want to know, what are we looking at? Shows the charging flying models and all that stuff. And a lot of that stuff's been leaked already. So there's a lot of resources talking about that stuff, as well as the fight first and everything like that, and consolidations. Oh, let's see. Data sheets. Now we're getting down to the keywords. Deep strike, infiltrator, leaders. Leaders are done before the beginning of the battle. So my thought is for tournaments, we're going to have to put them on our roster. Characters are going to have to be assigned in the roster, which I mean, I'm fine with that. That is what it is. Cool. That's fine. Stratagems. We got all those really cool. Oh, there's so many good stratagems now. I'm in love with the one that allows me to deep strike during my opponent's turn, during his reinforcement step, and then I can put a unit down and hide behind a wall and then walk a squad of Terminators out and do some work going into the next turn. I'm excited about that. Terrain features. Okay, so everything we saw before is it's just a cleaner card. Realistically, it's a cleaner card. It gives you movement, visibility, and the benefit of the cover. Each time a range attack is allocated to the infantry model that is wholly on top of this terrain feature, that model has battlefield cover. And that's for craters and rubble. So you know, okay, if this is a crater, then as long as they're on it, as long as they're on that cup holder size circle, they get the benefit of cover. It doesn't matter about visibility or anything. It says normal visibility rules, but the cover is just going to be, you're standing on it, you get count as cover. And that's how a lot of these terrain are done. It just tells you what exactly you need to be and where you need to be. Hills are interesting. This was one that I looking over these things that I found, like, you can scan through a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is going to be available and out, I'm sure, all over the place. And for the most part, none of it's really too surprising. It's just actually cleaner, very, very clean, but it's kind of how we've seen terrain evolve over time with a couple changes. So one of them being hills. It specifically says that hills, you are allowed to put other terrain feature on top of these hills as long as they don't overextend that. I feel like even with hills being in here, I don't feel like that's something we're really going to see. I might be wrong with it, but I feel like, I mean, it doesn't do anything for it. Like, hills do not do anything. They're a raised area of terrain. That's it. And then you can put a terrain feature on top of it. So I'm kind of surprised to go into this. I think it's Games Workshop saying, oh, but look here, we have rules for the terrain. Unfortunately, it's just, no one's really going to want to do that. It's setting that up on a tournament battlefield and trying to make a corner more lifted or put a hill on it. I just don't see it really adding anything to the general aesthetics of the battle. I think that's more of a rule. Like, people have some really cool, my buddy Aaron has a really awesome, like, pieces of terrain table that are 6 individual pieces that he can put together, and those have risers on it. So maybe, I mean, it gives some clarity to it, but for us, we always just treated them as part of the ground, you know. Woods, it talks about the benefits of cover in here. It talks about the towering, and towering being like Titanic units, since right now all the different there's not really any roles. There's no troops, no elites, no heavies. There's just unit, and character. So we get down to runes. Okay, so runes. So a lot of it looks. I feel like I keep saying this. A lot of it looks competitively the same. Here are the major changes. Number one, plunging fire. If a unit is more than 6 inches up off the ground, excuse me, you improve the AP by 1. I don't know I wonder if we're going to see that competitively. Is that going to be something that we're going to figure? Is that home field terrain, home territory terrain might have a 6-inch high point. 6 inches high, real quick. Just with like some of the terrain that me and Lane have been using. So this piece right here, which is one of our runes, we're not quite 6 inches high there. So it'd have to be a little taller than that. Yeah, because it says a model make a range attack. That's definitely, I wonder if we're going to see that. I wonder if we're going to see declared or count as, or if plunging fire is even going to make it to the competitive side of things, or is that going to be a casual played rule? Visibility, it literally says that you cannot see through windows of these things to units that are on the other side. Now, it does say in the beginning the footprint. It says both players need to determine what the footprint is. This is so that players know the model is wholly within this terrain feature, is within the terrain feature if it is mounted on a base. So it's talking about the bases that you see, the acrylics that we use. You see what other TOs probably use where they have a square to it. It does include the base of it. It says models cannot see over or through this terrain feature. A unit outside this terrain feature cannot draw a line of sight to a target on the other side of it. It says other side of it, and it's talking about the terrain feature as in this and its base as well. So models can move through the terrain. Model. Sorry about that. I just want to double check before I go saying that. It doesn't actually say when you are within the terrain feature what models can see into the terrain feature normally, and models that are wholly within this terrain feature can see out of it normally. So it looks like the windows are taken into consideration if you are wholly within. So this may be something, again, in TO and tournaments that they may say the first floor blocks line of sight, which is something we've heard a lot of. There's no windows, ignore the windows, et cetera, there. That's just going to come down to the different groups. I've seen some TOs go, nope, guess what? There's windows. That's why it is. This is how we have the terrain set up. So it'll just come that it's going to come down to the tournament organizers. I think we'll see a lot. I feel like we'll see more of TOs just go for first floor blocks line of sight. And because that's what we've seen for the year, the last year is what I've seen most dominantly. And I think it works out the best, just to allow everyone to not have any argument's sake of all these little windows and everything that are really all nice and look great on the model. They're not there. Because what sucks about those things, and I've had this get me a couple of times, and this is what I don't like, is when you're standing up there and you look down and you have something that has a top like this one does. You can't see the windows. So from the other side, your opponent sees the windows and can see through there and everything, and they assume that you can. They assume you can as well because they're right there. They're right in the open. But you don't. You put models there and then you get shot at and you're like, I didn't even realize there's windows there. Now you don't have to think about those things. And I know it's some people will go, well, don't be lazy. Walk around the table, look at the terrain in your territory and see what your opponent can see. And you know what? You're absolutely right. That's totally what I should do. But hey, if people are just going to say it blocks line of sight, I like that a lot better. I like being able to just rely on that. Benefit of cover, if you're within it, you benefit from having cover. So benefiting from cover is you get +1 to your save. It's very specific to say that you cannot gain +1 to your save if you are getting shot, if you already have a 3-up and are getting hit by AP 0. So along layman's terms, you're not able to now improve your 3-up characteristic to a 2-up. I guess that's to say that, okay, a tree or this rock or whatever that it's hitting, whatever that gun's beam is and whatever is hitting you is not going to make your armor better than that wall. Excuse me. All right, so we get some pretty pictures of what some battlefields can look like. Really cool. There's a satellite dish they keep using in this one, man. I mean, they really love these satellite dishes. I see 2 of them, 4, 6. I mean, yeah, same satellite dish. Then a bigger battlefield with some chaos. No satellite dish there, so apparently satellite dish are only allowed in small games. Oh no, here we are. We're back. Combat. Oh no, combat patrol, and the satellite dish returns. And then this really awesome terrain. There's this one terrain set. It just has so many different scaffolds that are all connected. It looks so cool, and I'd love to play a game on it, but it feels like it's just also a nightmare to play on too. It just feels like it. All right, so aircraft. This is new. Aircraft got some new rules. So hover. Hover has been something we've seen on things like the Storm Raven, Storm Talon, Storm Hawk, not Talon. You were able to go into hover, and then you just count basically as a normal vehicle. You lose the hard to hit, you lose all these other things. Now, you also lose aircraft. So, and it says, and every rule that aircraft would benefit or not be allowed to use. So now suddenly your Storm Raven can take a objective because it's not an aircraft anymore. However, hover says now hover has changed in how it works. So you start the game, and when you do all your declare reinforcements, declare war, do all that stuff, you're also going to declare if any of your vehicles are hovering. So the ones that are going to hover have to hover the whole game. And right on here, it says some aircraft models have hover listed in their abilities. When you are instructed to declare battle formations before doing anything else, you must first declare which models from your army with this ability will be in hover mode. What it changes now, you may deploy it because now aircraft all still have to go into strategic reserve. But now it loses aircraft. So now you deploy it normal. It's treated as a normal model with fly. So that must mean as well now it could hide behind walls. Based on its wound characteristics and stuff like that. Yeah, you could put these things behind a wall. But it says it will, and it also has a movement characteristic of 20 for the rest of the battle. So, and it can never be placed back in reserve, so it can't fly off the table. You can still choose to place them in reserve for normal reserve, it says. So, I mean, there's that. But really, though, the biggest thing is that you select hover at the beginning of the game, and then you stay there. So I'm wondering if things like the Storm Raven are going to have on their data sheet that they fly and their aircrafts, and then you can bring them into hover on like 3 or 4, and then they're stuck in hover for the rest of the game. I'd like that. I'd like that. I'd like that a little more play. Just seeing the fact that you can hover the vehicles, though, does kind of help out. And it's going to be interesting as well with the terrain features like runes that you can now hide behind with this vehicle because it cannot be shot at. Even though it's on a tire base, technically, it's still hovering. So kind of changes the dynamic on how all that stuff works. So you could hide that thing behind a wall like we've done in previous with like Silent King and stuff like that. Things that are bigger but technically can still be obscured can be. Talks about aircrafts and the move and the charge and how they pivot. All that stuff is the same. The pivot's the same. Can't charge with a flyer, and you can only get charged by things with fly. Now we get into mustering your army. Select your battle size. Start your army roster. You can download blank army roster sheets from warhammercommunity.com. I'm going to look and see if that's, I wonder if that's up yet. Probably not. Probably not. But they give you blank army sheets. Army roster, you Select your army faction. You select your detachment rules, so that's going to be cool to see all the different detachment rules. So we've seen a couple of them, which means that there's going to be more than one. So it's going to be probably the play style that you appeal to you more. Select the only units you want. Your army must include at least one character. Okay, so rule of threes still applies. Battle line is any unit with battle line. You can take 6 of those, or dedicated transports. You can also take 6 of those. Only characters can be given enhancements to your army, and no more than 3. And if your army do enhancements, and each enhancement included in your army must be unique. Epic heroes cannot be given enhancements. Your army cannot include the same epic hero more than once. So you can include multiple epic heroes, just only one of each named character. So it's legendary effect. And then you select your warlord. So warlords are not going to be really a part of your army construction part, in the sense that you're not going to have to take it looks like you're not going to have to take a warlord to unlock other things and have other things. Your warlords pick after. As well as the fact you probably are going to start making decisions on leaders and characters that are going to go into different units. Missions. What do we got here? So this is starting the order of how we're going to play the game. Number 1, you muster your army. Number 2, read mission objectives. Okay. 3, create the battlefield. So number 3 for competitive play would probably be if we're doing player plays terrain. So player plays terrain is going to be the third thing you do after the mission has been established. Whether the missions probably will be predetermined, I would assume. You determine attacker and defender. Declare battle formations. Which of the leaders will be with each of the units. Okay, so mustering your armies. I said this before, and it looks like I answered my question here. So it looks like you might be able to conceal where your leaders are going, so your leaders can kind of bounce around from game to game, since you're going to determine who's going first. So it's almost like a transport effect. Once you know who's going first, that's when you're putting the guys out there. You deploy your army. Each player included deployment map, blah, blah, blah. And we'll list restrictions, okay? Determine first turn. So each turn will determine, each mission will tell you how to determine which player has the first turn. That's interesting. So not every mission is going to be the same way to determine who goes first. Ooh, that's going to be spicy. So we might get some he who deploys first goes first type things. That's going to be interesting. Resolve pre-battle rules. Okay, so like, and then begin the battle. Players alternate resolving any pre-battle rules. Units from their armies have starting with the player who will take the first turn. So you will usually know who's going first before you decide if you want to move, scout moves or things like that. Which, if I didn't mention this before, I like the fact that like scout and all that stuff is conferred to the transport that they're in, which is cool. Objective markers are a 40mm circle, and then they're measured out from it 3 inches, same as what we've seen before. And then we get into, was there mission objectives, mustering the army, create the battlefield. Talks about the size and what we should use, which is again our normal play mats. And then we get down to the last page, which stops and we don't see really any missions. We see an example of what a table would look like. It talks about, again, deploy armies. It says the attacker deploys first, must be set up wholly or continue. Determine first turn. Players should roll off again, and the winner takes first turn. So down here it says that down here it adds an addendum of the players should roll off to see who takes the first turn. Okay, that's for only war. Where the other one is missions. It just says missions. So it's going to be interesting, though. I wonder, I wonder how that's going to, what they're going to use for that. It'll tell you what you need to do in order to win the game. If neither player manages to achieve the victory, then the game is going. Okay, so I think that this might be where we're starting to look into some pieces might be missing. Hold on, page 54, because I think I got a 56, 57. No, okay, so it moves on. Oh, others can, before we start, mission. The core rules include a single mission, only war. That is ideal to get the action started quickly. Others can be found elsewhere in this or other books. You can play a mission of your own creation if you and your opponent can agree it's a mission. Okay, so this is telling you the loadout, and then it gives you the only war mission, which mustering your army, okay, you do all that stuff. Mission objectives, capture and control. This one only has 1 victory point for controlling an objective marker, up to 3 for only war. Then it has the battlefield size, determine attacker. Still declare formations, deploy your armies. Interesting. And then it shows that, but it doesn't talk about each player set up players and alternate setting up objective markers, and how many objective markers do you get? Players alternate set up objective markers. Battlefield starting with whichever player win the roll off until a total of 4. 4 objective markers. So this is like a standard pitch battle where there's just a whole objective markers for 3 points. There's no other. There's only 1 mission objective that it's showing for only war. But the one thing that's interesting that I see down here at the bottom that I want to bring up is because like this is not what we're going to see competitive play wise. It's a real fast, quick pitch battle for learning the game. So you're not going through all the crazy stuff that we're about to see and go through with a lot of the cards and setting up the missions. Because we've already seen where you score like 5 points on primaries, and I don't see anything in here talking about primaries objectives at all. So we might also see some more objectives too. But the one thing I see here is number 11 when it says determine a victor. If at the end of the battle, 1 army has been destroyed, the player commanding the opposing army is the victor. Otherwise, the player with the most victory points is the victor. In the case of a tie, the battle is a draw. So, 2 things I'm thinking right here. 1, this is the only war basic pitched mission, which now I see, and looking over that and reading this and seeing that, that's what they're doing. It's just a very, very basic, easy to follow mission while learning Warhammer. But in Determine the Victor, they actually put tabling as a potential win condition. Will we see that pop up on other missions where where determining the victor at that point, like it says you use score only if you have models still alive, and it still runs a 5-turn game. Is that the new normal? Is tabling an opponent now going to be is now tabling an opponent potentially a way to win when you were down in points as well? In the mission part of it, it says each mission will tell you what you need to do in order to win the game. If neither player manages to achieve the victory, then it's a draw. So each mission is going to say that at the end of the game, whoever has scored the most points wins. Or is it going to have this little caveat? Is this a little snippet that we're about to see where these missions are going to say at the end of the battle, 1 army has been destroyed. The player commanding the opposing army is the victor. Is that about to be what we see on all these missions? And if that's the case, well, we might be seeing those Death Stars I was talking about early on. Because what Death Stars can do is they can play on you can't kill me. I just need to wipe you out. I got 5 turns to eliminate you. Can I do it? And then I win the game. We'll see. We'll see. Those are some of the pieces that are still a mark on this to be seen. I think that the fallback mechanic is really cool. I like how that works. I like the fact that transports basically don't hurt your guys at all. I got Grey Knight Terminators that can jump in a Land Raider and be fine. The hover rule on aircraft, interesting, interesting. I don't see it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see with stuff like the Storm Raven, and that might be able to do something. Storm Ravens have had some time. So, yeah, lots unpacked here. Lot still waiting to see some more missions. Still need to see missions and what the game is actually going to look like on the table. But most importantly, points and the full army books. We don't know how all this stuff's going to work together. Like I enjoy theorizing and rolling some dice and seeing what we can come up with. But realistically, at the end of the day, until we see everything put together, something might look really cool right now. Have great stats, great abilities, great everything, and look awesome on paper. And then once those indexes hit, we have all the points and we have all the armies and we have all the abilities, then we look at it and go, but this unit falls into these categories, gets all these buffs, all these perks, and next thing you know, they're the ones running roughshod on these armies. So, I mean, yeah, we still got to wait for that. There's a couple units that until we see that, I'd like to throw some dice at and see. The next one I think I want to do is the Terminators. We've seen their increase in toughness, 4-up invuln. So let's take some of the new weapons of the Imperium and throw it in there. Loving the bolt rifle right now, man. Assault heavy. At first I looked at that and I didn't understand what it meant. Now that we've seen the what do you call it, the keywords, going back to some of the early released information and looking at it now and seeing how different, looking back and seeing how different these weapons look. Like the bolt rifle was an early release, and now when you look back at it and realize it's assault heavy, that means that you can advance and shoot on a 3-up. You can move and shoot on a 3-up. You can stand still and shoot it on a 2-up. That's such a cool gun. That is so cool. So, you guys have enjoyed this, looking through all this stuff and just kind of gathering up some information and starting to learn this game. There's a couple times that I obviously had to stop and read something where I was like, oh, that's interesting. But these are the first takes. These are the first times I'm going through some of this stuff and getting that information out there to you guys. And there's a lot of you out there that may have already seen this, read this, or hear something I'm saying and go, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not how that works. Hold on. And start building on this, because this is the way that this is one thing that I do love about 40K is that our community is really, really built on growth. And I'm trying to grow here on this channel, trying to grow with all of you guys. Appreciate the support. Please, guys, subscribe if you haven't already. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Thanks for watching.